So we've come back to my kitchen and we brought the chaga back that we harvested out there in the mountains. There's a lot of ways to work with the chaga once we get it back. One of the things to keep in mind is that a piece like this, if it's not dried properly, will mold. There's a certain type of mold that attacks chaga, and it will especially start to attack it inside on the mycelial part. So it's important to dry it or use it right away or within a few days of bringing it home. Now this chaga is still wet, still fresh, and so I'm not going to go through the process of drying it, but here's how that would look. You could dry it in a dehydrator, or something I'll do very often is just dry it right in my oven. You can bring your oven up to about 175 degrees. That's usually the lowest setting that's going to be on a modern stove. Put it down on its lowest setting and fill the racks up with the chaga or other mushrooms you've harvested, and you can just let it dry overnight. That will reduce the moisture enough so that the mold can't set up inside the chaga, and that's important. Now once it's dry, it's really easy to break apart. All you got to do is put it on a hard surface and hit it with a hammer, and it will come apart into big chunks. Now those chunks can be put into a Vitamix dry, and they can be blended dry right down into a powder. And so the powder extracts really easily. If you are somebody who just got a hold of some chaga and you might not really have a big supply of it, drying it and powdering it will make it go a lot further. Now, I live in an area where there's so much chaga and so much abundant chaga, and I love the practice of going out and harvesting, so I'll just boil big chunks like this. Now, chaga, to extract its medicine, and again, its medicines are polysaccharides and triterpenes. In order to get that medicine out, it really needs to be boiled. So that's unlike a lot of other herbs where we can just put hot water on them and steep them. In other words, make an infusion. Chaga won't really extract well like that. So what I've done is I've taken my fresh spring water I gather at my springs, and I filled up this pot here. You'll notice I'm using a glass pot, and I like to when I can. You know, I have large pots like this as well that I use for things that, you know, where I need to do big quantity. But if when I can, and I just can't find glass pots that big, but you know, for this kind of a job, I've got glass here, and that's because the glass doesn't leach anything. Stainless steel is a great material, but it does leach some metals into your food over time, things like nickel. So glass is great because it's really inert. What I've done here is started boiling a piece of chaga about the same size as that one. And you can see that right there. Now what I'll do with that is boil it for 2 hours. That tea is going to get really dark, like the color of molasses or the color of maple syrup. And then what we'll do is we'll pour that off, we'll take that liquid, and we'll turn that into a chaga elixir. So there's a little bit of a controversy happening right now in the mushroom hunting or the mushroom gathering or the mycological communities about chaga. There's some questions about how to use it. One of the things I'm really interested in is ethnobotany, and that's the study of how different cultures traditionally use the plant species in their environment. Now, of course, mushrooms are not plants, they're fungi. However, the ethnobotanical accounts of the chaga use in Siberia is that they would remove the black outer covering, the part that looks really burned or charred, this outer part, which is really distinctively black, and it's one of the ways you know you're looking at chaga. I've seen people get confused looking for chagas and find things that are burls growing on trees and thought they were chaga, but you'll know it because the outside is so distinctly charcoal in appearance, like it's been burned. And that black part concentrates a molecule from out of the birch's bark called betulin. And betulin has been found to be an anti-cancer compound. Now there's reports again that that would be removed, and what would be used would be this inner part, which is a much more orange color, and that's really the mycelial mass from inside the chaga's body, the sclerotial body of the chaga. I've been using it with the outside intact for a long time, and I'm looking for some more information or research. So if you come across any of that information about the removal of that and why, please pass it on to me. In the meantime, I've been using the whole mushroom and just dropping it right in there. Another thing I want to point out is this. If you were to take your chaga and powder it down, and then extract it that way, decoct the powder, probably after one decoction, that powder would be pretty spent and you wouldn't be able to use it for anything else except like maybe compost. However, if you take a whole piece like this, there's really so much medicine in it that you can boil this down and extract it several times. So a piece this size, I'll extract maybe 5-6 times before the tea starts getting so light that you notice there's really not that much medicine left in it. So again, the piece that I have going in here, you know, after this tea is done in 2 hours, I'll take that piece out and I'll leave it somewhere to kind of dry out a little bit, and the next day I'll use it again. And I'll use it again and again until it stops yielding medicine. And that way we're not wasting all that precious mycelial body, that precious mushroom that we've harvested. So remember, you can use it several times if you haven't powdered it. If you powder it, you can get away with using a lot less, but that will get extracted right away. So both ways are valid and they work, and when you live in a place where there's a lot of chaga around, there's no problem in using big pieces like this. I've known people to just take them out, put them on a plate, stick them in the refrigerator. I'll just leave them out on a windowsill in the sun usually and let them dry before I use them again. So I've let this tea cool down for a while. This is kind of a time-lapsed video. I got a strainer here, and I really like this style of strainer that comes down to like a cone like that, because it makes that everything that you've poured through it will come directly through the cone part there, right at the apex of it. And that's really cool when you stick it in the blender because they fit really well together. So what I'm going to do is take this chaga tea, and that big chunk of chaga is still sitting right inside there. So I'm going to pour it through the strainer so that big chunk doesn't end up falling into the blender. From there, we've got the base for this chaga elixir, that real strong chaga decoction, which is, you know, the action of boiling the herbs. So we've decocted the chaga, turned it into this. Now that on its own tastes really good. It tastes like maple vanilla tea. And that's easy to build up into a drink that has quite a lot of flavor, but also a lot of nutrition and food as well.